Hi everyone, this is Navika Chora, a cloud engineer and a Microsoft most valuable professional in developers technology. I warmly welcome each one of you to the third episode of Tech Chat with Navika, wherein today we would be talking about Microsoft most valuable professional program and the Microsoft Regional Director program. And for that, we have an expert with us today, Mr. Magnus Martensson. Magnus is a Microsoft Regional Director. He is a Microsoft Most Valuable Professional in Azure category, and that too for consecutive 12 years. That is a lot. Magnus is a CEO and a tech lead at Loftysoft. His technical expertise lies in the area of Azure and everything related to it, starting from creating enterprise architecture to cloud migration, product strategy, and the list goes on. Magnus is pretty much extremely enthusiastic about contributing to the tech communities. He has been speaker at big tech conferences. He conducts conferences such as Cloudbursts, etc. I'm going to stop here, Magnus, because you have a whole lot of great achievements, and it's difficult to make them fit in such a short intro. So, and last but not the least, he is an inspiration to so many of us, and I'm sure people are going to get inspired after this session. Thank you so much, Magnus, for taking out your precious time and joining us here today.
My God, thank you, Navika. You're making me sound so good. I'm blushing over here.
You are so good. You have, I mean, honestly, when I had to prepare your intro, Magnus, I was going through your website and stuff yesterday, and already I was aware of the work that you've been doing. But when I was taken aback. I was like, oh my God, Magnus is into so many things. When I saw your LinkedIn profile, I properly saw that. Went onto your website, then MVP profile, and then I was like, that's too much. I'm gonna cut off on certain things and just to mention a few of them in the intro. Then
I don't know. Maybe I'm just good at talking about myself. I don't know. Maybe that is the thing. But the point is that I think in all this, I think one key thing to mention initially is that this is a lifestyle. To some extent, every one of us is what we do. We are what we do, right? Of course, a lot of us might identify with what we do outside of work, as in I have something very important that I love to do that inspires me, but it's not my professional job. I am one of the fortunate ones to have my professional job as my absolute life passion, and the ability to define myself in what I do, and that I think is a privilege. It's a massive privilege to be allowed to have that as your life. And I guess that's why there's such an imprint about what I do online, because quite a bit of it's marketing and promotion. I am by trade a professional consultant. I consult with my customers. I help them build solutions and be better. If I were not delivering value to them that made them better, I would have nothing. That's my job. And therefore there's a fair amount of self-promotion in there. It has to be accurate, but it can sometimes be a little tedious to be mentioning I was on this blog, I did that, and yeah, well,
yeah,
that's part of me getting more business, I guess. But in
right.
essence, I am pleased to be one of those people who can be truly passionate about what I do and live this life as that defines me, and I'm defined by it.
Right, right, right. But I must say, those are all the facts that you have stated on the website and etc. And that shows the amount of work that you've been doing, and that's just commendable.
Yeah, but again, it's fortunate circumstance for me, right? I mean, some
Yeah,
people, for example, let's say that you have a job doing something, you're an accountant or anything, right?
yeah,
And
yeah,
then you also happen to be a really, really strong tennis player, right? If you add those times up, that's a lot
yeah,
of time, right? Both the job and
yeah.
and the pastime or the passionate other extracurricular activity. For me, it's the same. So,
Right, yeah.
so yeah,
You're the lucky.
it sounds like a lot, but it's the same time, and
Right,
I think I consider myself lucky to have that.
right, right. Even I consider myself lucky in that and that's the way how you say, because cloud is something that even I'm very passionate about. I'm pursuing that
Mhm.
as my job as well. And then again, and when it comes to giving it back to the community, it's like that's something that I think that's in my DNA. I can say I just love sort of empowering others, and I just feel that if we have certain knowledge and if we just share it with people, there's nothing wrong in it, right? We're just
Yeah,
empowering others, you know,
exactly. And
to be
that's
empowered with
that's
us.
who we are, right? And I can see that
Exactly.
with in you as well. We have spoken a couple of times here, and I'm so glad you invited me to your show. That
It's my honor.
that you think and feel very much the same, and it is within this space, workspace, sure, but also in this community, in this companionship with other people who are as passionate about tech as you and I are, that I find most of my good friends and lifelong friendships with people. And by this time, I can almost say that lifelong friendships, right, or at least
Yeah,
lifelong friendships with people
correct.
who are driven by the same passions, who are as nerdy, who are as equal with technology, and who can sit in a bar in the middle of anywhere and just sit in a bar and in the whole evening discussing, migration strategies. Who does that? Well, we do, right? But almost no
Right.
one else.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah,
Discussing migration strategies.
right? I mean, who does
Yeah,
that? I mean, only true tech geeks would do such a thing.
true that.
And there you find people who are like-minded, who you can see at eye level and be like, okay, we can talk about this all night.
Yeah.
And it's true, we can.
Yeah, because you're passionate about it, right? You don't
Mm,
treat it as your work. You're just too much into it that
it's
you just, it
yeah,
comes naturally to you.
yeah.
It's in your automatic mode now.
And so for people who see things differently, maybe they have a work life and another life. For those people, um, they have they have a division, right? I can't see a division. It's the same thing. So for me, that is the same thing, and that's who I am. That's, I guess, why there are so many podcast appearances and going to a conference to speak and running community events and various things. But it's just who I am.
Right? And you're super inspiring. Okay, so Magnus, to start with, like for the viewers who are not aware about it, can you just give all of us a small, brief explanation as to what Microsoft MVP community is all about? And coming from you, who has been in this program for 12 years, I am sure it's going to be pretty much informative and educative for all the viewers to learn about it.
To do this, I have like, I don't really have trophies in my office. Well, actually, I do have another trophy that I'm going to show in a little bit. But this is like, it's the one that I have here on my desk, right? It's the Microsoft
Yeah.
trophy with the annual ring. There's actually, I'm missing one. I haven't received the one for this year yet, but that's what it looks like when you have a lot of them. So yeah, every year in the Microsoft MVP program, you have to. I'll show you the other thing later. Every year you have to kind of qualify to be an MVP. You know this well. When you are first awarded MVP, somebody nominates you. A Microsoft person nominates you, who knows you or knows that you're doing a lot of things in the community, in the tech community specifically, right? Or another MVP, someone you know, might nominate you. But the nomination is just a nomination. It doesn't mean much in itself. It's just a person saying, yeah, I know this person, and I know of some technical things that this person has done in the community. It doesn't mean anything more than that. Um, so it really doesn't matter who does it, or just that it gets done. You will then receive like an invitation that says, hey, you have been nominated for Microsoft MVP. Would you like to accept the nomination? And then you get to fill in forms like your achievements. What am I doing that makes someone else tell Microsoft that I could be one of the MVPs? Now there are the exact number isn't public, but you can look at the MVP website and see that there are hundreds, even several thousands. I'd say, don't quote me on this, somewhere between 4.5 and 5.5 thousand. I don't know, 4 or 5,000 MVPs total in the world. and across many different technology areas. You and I are both, you Azure, right?
No, no, I am from developers technology and
Ah, you're
accessibility.
EdTech. Nice. I love it. Yes, I love it.
But
I'm Azure.
it's
So
yeah,
that's like the
it's
first question when
accessibility.
when two MVPs meet. That's like the first question, right? It's like, oh, hello. Oh, hi, Navika. Nice to meet you. Which MVP area are you in? That's
Yeah,
the first question. Love one.
that's the basic. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, always number one. Okay, so we gave that as an example here, but the MVP program, what it means is that you testify, right? Or you submit your profile. This is what I do, and then Microsoft takes everyone who has the same submission, right, or who have submitted, and evaluates and see who are the ones that we think represent Microsoft's community and values out in the world. And then those are awarded 1 year MVP title. Now, it's pretty brilliant to be in that group, to say the least, because if you're driven, if you're passionate, if you are, hungry for knowledge and willing to share, this community, I mean, there's nothing like it. There's nothing better that I know. All these individuals who are so knowledgeable and so passionate, and honestly, almost everyone is really intelligent.
Right, right. And I absolutely agree to you, Magnus. I mean, even I just feel so much blessed to be a part of this community, and that too at a young age. Like whatever little bit contributions I've tried to make till now, and it just feels so good to be part of this community. And I think along with this title of MVP comes a lot of responsibilities also on your shoulder that
Yeah,
you have to sort of, now that you're at this position, you have to reach the people at large. What you were doing earlier, now you have, now you have that accessibility that now you can make a positive impact on more people's life, right?
that's right.
That's how I treat it, that now I can reach out to more people. And even if you can get a smile on someone's face, by maybe just educating that person or empowering that person, especially I being from accessibility category. That's what my aim is always, to reach out to people who are who are really willing to learn, sort of a thing. So yeah, I absolutely second your thought, and thank you so much for such a detailed explanation. Yeah. Magnus, my next question is, while I was hovering through your profile, right? And indeed, I was aware about it earlier as well. So you became Microsoft MVP 12 years back, and that too in Azure category. And your first year of MVP award was 2012, right? And and Azure was launched just a couple of years before that,
Yes,
if I'm
that's
not
right.
wrong, right?
That's
Um,
right.
I'm very curious to know. I mean, how did you gain expertise in Azure in just such a small period of time? Because see, now when you
Oh,
see we have so much, so many resources, right?
right.
Now to look up to sort of add up to our knowledge, etc., etc. So many mediums. But 12
Yeah.
years back, especially when a technology is just newly launched, that
Mm.
too Azure, what made you get into that, and how did you, and you must have gained expertise in that, so much of knowledge, and then you must have
Yeah.
empowered people as well, combination of both. So this question is basically that, and this is my personal question because I was very curious to know. When yesterday only, when I was going through, I was like, I'm going to ask this question for sure.
Right.
um what fascinates you so much about Azure, and how
Yeah.
did it all happen in the beginning?
It's kind of a big question, and an interesting story there. First of all, what's important to understand is that in the beginning, Azure, which was then called Windows Azure, was about this size compared to what it is today. Today, it's everything and everything else. So it's not really possible to compare becoming an Azure MVP today with being one of the initial inaugural or one of the first Azure MVPs in existence, because it's so different. It's so vastly different. So, I mean, long story short, first of all, I came into the industry at the end of the last millennia, right? So that's when I started in the industry to work, right? What did you do in 1999? Just sorry, don't answer that. But that's I was there, and I was in a place where I liked architecture, and I liked being the sort of the technical behind the API kind of a person, and I can I could do, can is maybe a strong statement at this point, but I could do front end work, but I generally don't. I'm the architect. I am the API is my user experience, right? That's basically where I hang out. And I already felt that when this cloud notion started to become sort of addressed. AWS announced their cloud, or Amazon announced their AWS cloud, I should say, back in 2006. And Microsoft's announcement, public announcement, was in 2008. And general availability was in 2010. Right? So that's where you have the setup of how it happened just in time. I was at the Microsoft PDC conference, the Professional Developer Conference, in Los Angeles, the year of 2008, when they announced. I was in the keynote audience, standing in front of the stage, when the person who was the CTO of Microsoft at that time, Ray Ozzie, when he was taking the stage at the PDC conference, and he was like walking the stage like this, and he was saying, so I'd like to announce a new service in the cloud, Windows Azure, just like that. That's how he just came out and said it. And there was a initial Windows Azure logo there. And I was in that audience, and that was a reveal event. And I was there, and I was listening at that in the audience. I'm like, this seems to be right up my alley. This seems very interesting. I will focus in on this and see what happens. And so I did. I went home, and I did one of my first presentations about Azure was how to run your websites in your ASP website or ASP.NET. Can't remember how to run your websites in Azure. Using Windows Azure was basically the because Azure was positioned as a service, a cloud service at the web tier of development. That suited me very well, because I'm an app developer at heart, as in I build logic that runs for applications. Somebody builds the front end. I'll take care of the architecture and the back end and the data storage and all the things. But I don't care about virtual machines and operating systems specifically. I'm a developer, so I just want things to work. So anyway, that's a lot of information, I guess, but that's a part of what the story was. So I decided to focus on this, and sure enough, sometime later I became the first Azure MVP in the Nordic countries, in North Europe, North Europe, Nordic. I was first there.
Yeah. I read about that in your LinkedIn description yesterday night. Well, I got introduced to cloud when in the Microsoft Learn Student Ambassadors program. That's when I got introduced to cloud computing. And before that, I was into data structures, algorithm, etc., etc. But when I got into MLSA program, then I was like, this is something fascinating. Then I got into it. I got into Azure, and then there was no look back. And see, life came in, what it says, destiny, and now I'm pursuing that as my career, as my job. And I think the first session when I conducted it was in my college days, and I do not remember the exact name as you do, but that was the first ever technical session that I've conducted that has been on Azure.
Nice.
So it's been good. When we talk about MVP program, it's all about, I think that way, that it's all about learning, upskilling. It's like a cycle, and then sharing your knowledge with the community or empowering them. This continuous cycle goes on.
Yep.
And you have been sustaining this continuous cycle since 12 years, which is commendable. I wonder how much impact I'm sure you must have created in these 12 years, right? And in order to sustain this, it's pretty much, it is a task. So just throw some light on it, please.
Some light on how to do that?
how to sustain it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. Again, it comes back to just this is my life, and I'm sure some people, well, people who would think that is weird or even sad, maybe wouldn't even listen to this video. But I think that there's a lot of people out there who, like you say, could be inspired by it, and it's just that again, this is my life. We started Global Azure, for example, as a thing to learn
Yeah.
about Azure and teach about Azure and inspire each other about Azure and spread knowledge.
Right.
Global Azure is globalasure.net,
I
an
know.
annual
I
big
that
big
that
big
was when I
bang big bang
first.
about Azure, right? Um,
That's when we first interacted, if you
yeah,
recall.
yeah, it is.
Right? You were hosting it,
Exactly.
and I had come as a gold MLS at back then.
Yeah, exactly. And so Azure, Global Azure is something that we started. Was actually a friend and myself who were the first two MVPs for Azure in Sweden. And we said, hey, listen, we should do an event together. And then we realized don't live in the same city. And I was like, okay, what if I do an event and you do an event? We could visit each other's events. And then, you know what? What if we do them two events, but on the same day? And then we could even have a remote session between the locations. That would be fun. That would be cool. It's something we do every day and all the time nowadays. But back then, it was done, but not so frequently. So we said, hey, that sounds fun. And then all of a sudden, it started going like, oh, what we know these guys over in Belgium and that guy in London and this other person over there and that other woman over there. And we'd be like, what if a lot of people want to do events on the same day? And then we use the Azure. So if you're an MVP, there are lots of distribution lists, email lists that you can join and talk about the technology in your area. So there's an Azure distribution list. There's one for M365, and there's different ones, right? And so we posted on the Azure alias, the distribution list for MVPs, and said, we're going to do this. Anybody else want to join? And it all went absolutely crazy. It went bananas. The first year we did Global Azure, it was then called it was then called Windows Azure Bootcamp because Microsoft was still called Windows Azure, and this was called an Azure Bootcamp. It started up as something that Microsoft did, but they didn't want to keep the brand, so they handed it over to the community, and we picked it up. And so the Windows Azure Bootcamp #1 was in 36 countries in 96 locations. We were blown away, almost reached 100 the first year. It's absolutely incredible. We had no idea what we were doing, none. And we were just doing it. And it turns out that there were a lot of other people who also wanted to passionately to do two things, right? Inspire about Azure technology, be there and create community, and also feel like they belong to something larger. And it turns out Global Azure is that. So today there are plenty of other events that use the same setup. There's just to mention a couple that are really successful. There's AI boot camps, right? There's global AI boot camps, and there's global DevOps boot camps, and there's global many different kinds of global X boot camp, whatever, many. And, and what's so funny about that is that we started it. We really did. We set a new standard. We didn't know that we were doing that. We didn't deliberately try to do that. We weren't seeking to have fame or anything like that. We just passionately wanted to share about cloud. So that is inspiring for us as well, and so fun and so rewarding. Doesn't matter where we go in the world. If I travel to a conference anywhere, there's always going to be a person that comes up to me and says, hey, I ran the event for Global Azure in so-and-so. And then they proceed to tell a story about how great their event was and how much fun they have with that. So it's easy to see that, going back to your question, sustaining this for a long time is not very difficult when you're doing something that is the most fun thing that you can ever imagine to do. And it's so rewarding. And it's so, it builds your expertise. It builds your community feeling. You hang out with your friends when you do it, your best friends, and you just do it together. So really, sustaining being an MVP for 12 years, it's not difficult when you're doing the most fun thing you know.
Yeah, yeah, true that. True that. I agree to you. And so good to hear about the backstory of Global Azure, Magnus. I mean, how it all started. And I think it's like just like minded people,
Yeah,
joining hands together. That's how it just happened.
yeah,
And of course, Global Azure is a big name now, right? It just came out of a thought of like you wanted to share your knowledge, right?
exactly.
You wanted
Yeah,
people to know about Azure, right?
exactly.
That was the
Just
whole idea
passion,
behind
passion for
passion.
sharing, running events,
Exactly.
and not. I would say also one more thing that there are so many, and I applaud every community leader effort, right? It doesn't matter what scale, it doesn't matter how you do it. You don't have to be part of something global to call yourself a
Yeah.
community leader. Almost all communities are small groups of people that come together in a shared interest space like technology and learn together and then have a mind share together with each other and all of the work in global Azure and all of the work in in community leaderships that's done by other people. We global Azure are just some people that like to put extend some for hopefully some sponsorships and just do a larger scope thing. But all
Right.
the hard work and the hours spent and all the effort by the different community leaders out there, those are the real heroes of the story. It's just that not everybody wants to have a large scope.
Hmm.
Many of our peers, many of the community leaders out there, they like to have their own smaller scope with just in our town, just the people who work with, I don't know what it is, M365 or Azure. We can come together and we can share and we can talk.
Right.
That's enough. That's definitely way enough
Right.
to spend your time in the community, no matter what the scale and the size. It doesn't
Absolutely. 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 I agree to that. I
matter.
think the immense amount of satisfaction comes. I think that's the reason I really resonated with what you just said because
Yeah.
it just gives you immense amount of satisfaction if you're able to do something
Yeah.
for others. That's the mindset I've always had. So
Mm.
when you're talking about such things that your whole idea was to spread awareness about Azure and sort
Yeah.
of teach that to others, I guess
Yeah.
I really resonate with that because
Yeah.
that's the same mindset. And then whatever comes in the way is just coming naturally because we just aim at
Yeah.
impacting people's and
And,
the
and,
people
and what I
involved.
was going to say is that I think the thing that made global Azure, that made the global part of these events is that some people don't see geographical or other boundaries at all. We don't. I think we're in that way we are just a little bit weird in our own way that we don't see or recognize that there is such a thing as a global, distance between you and I, for example. I don't care
Right.
about that. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter at
Yeah.
all. And then I talk to some other people that feel strongly that I just want to be, take some time away from other important things in my life and spend that learning and doing that locally together with a few people. So you have different kinds of mindset and different drivers and different needs, and those who want to have uh, the smaller frame, they do that way. But we are the people who are just do not see global boundaries at all.
Right. 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 Just agree to you. I mean, I think this is a plus point of conducting virtual events, as you just spoke about global Azure.
Yeah,
People can join from different parts of the world, right? Otherwise, traveling physically would be a task to do that, right? But
exactly.
it's just it click button away, right? You just press it, enter the session,
Yeah.
and just gain knowledge out of it.
Global Azure is actually interestingly that we came to talk about that. It was local community meetups all at the same day, right? So every local community meetup was in person, and then the
Yeah,
pandemic happened, and everything
yeah,
was thrown online because
everything
reasons
changed.
we
Yeah,
had to. And then after a few years of those restrictions, um, we all felt fatigue. All felt that it wasn't giving us the same passion, it wasn't giving us the same drive and the same joy. And so, actually, with the last edition of Global Azure, we said that we're not going to host an open general call for paper on our website. We will instead focus on in-person events. So any event can choose if they are a virtual event, they can choose if they are a hybrid event, or if they're an in-person event only. That's perfectly fine, because we don't decide what another community does. That's not our position to do. But we want to go back towards being a lot in person, because it's in the personal connections that you find when you sit across from a person. I mean, we can see each other's face here on the video, but it's still not the same. I would much rather sit in your living room and talk to you about
Right.
these things, or in your office and talk about these things, or in a restaurant, where we can really have a more meaningful connection, like peers and friends. That would be much better, much preferred. But at the
Obviously,
same time, so Global Azure is many local events. Right?
right,
That's
right.
that's what I.
You thanks for giving such a detailed answer. And I have myself got to know so much about Global Azure. I mean, obviously, I had an idea about it, but not the backstory that I just got to know about it today. Magnus, now since we have spoken about Global Azure and communities, just taking it a little bit forward. When we talk about tech communities, so usually people say that okay, someone who is pursuing academics in college, etc., he should be a part of tech communities. But I think, in my opinion, someone who is a working professional should must be a part of a technical community,
Yeah,
um, especially someone. I mean, definitely someone who is pursuing technology as a career, right? I mean, it is so dynamic. We need to keep ourselves updated every
yeah,
day. Is something new keeps on coming up, and we need to learn that. I
yeah,
think tech communities is a good way, right, which helps us upskill ourselves when we meet like-minded people. And then definitely it helps in networking as well,
yeah.
on a long run. So what's your opinion on it, as to how important this technical community is for working professionals?
I would say it is incredibly important for the passion of the trade, for the drive of your life as a professional. Um, I I am sad to meet people who work in technology who are not passionate about it. There are unfortunately many who are not, who maybe feel just overwhelmed or overworked, but also maybe underappreciated, but also maybe are not truly passionate about the job. I think adding community participation and engagement adds a lot of value to any technical professional person and their life. Um, Being with other people who work with the same things, who have the same challenges at work, and maybe the same manager, maybe a similar manager, or just have a bad place to work, or a great place to work, or good colleagues, or annoying colleagues. But still, we are united by the fact that we do the same kinds of things. I work with Azure, or I work with DevOps, or whatever it is. To meet up with other people who share the same, who walk the same paths, who share the same challenges and toils and daily toils in our lives. That gives such a sense of community and support system, but also positively, of course, much more the positive parts, that it adds positive value, that you can, oh, and you had that problem, and how did you solve this thing? Oh, you did it like that. That's very interesting. And learning from each other, that drive. And then maybe formalizing that as a more organized community, and setting up sessions, and maybe inviting a speaker and having someone come and do a show and tell about something. Here's how we did whatever that was technically, and then talk about this, and figure out and see if I can bring something back to my company, or back to my work life, that helps me. That Not having that in it's unthinkable for me to not have that in my life. But it gives at least me so much, and I hope that it does the same for so many others, that we live, breathe, dream, and sleep and eat this all the time. Um, and I learned the most from my peers, from other MVPs, from other technical experts in the industry. Don't have to be MVPs, but it just so happens that I know a lot of MVPs. And we
Of
teach and we
course.
learn from each other, right? That's the passion, that's the dream that we share, to be as professional and as good and as strong as possible. And learning is a natural part of being in technology, because technology always changes, and it changes fast. It's never changed as fast as it does now, and it's probably going to change faster even still in the future. So being on top of that game is something you have to do together in a group. Otherwise, I don't think that any one person can just sit alone and be on top of the game. It doesn't work like that. You can be on top of the game in a group. That's what you can do.
Right. I
Yeah.
agree to you. I mean, in general, we can also say that really helps in your holistic growth. I mean, if you join in your early age, right, you're part like Microsoft Student Ambassadors, Learn Student Ambassadors program. It really helped me in the holistic growth. For
Yeah.
example, conducting technical. See, it's not a cakewalk to conduct a
No.
technical session. It takes a lot of different things that you keep in your mind points while doing a technical session. All of that I've learned through that program, and
Yep.
I think it really helped me in the holistic growth, and so it would be for any other person who's a part of a good technical community. Of course,
Exactly.
as you just mentioned, networking, uh, meeting like-minded peers. You maybe end up participating in a hackathon. If not even a
Yep.
hackathon, maybe you're just troubleshooting something that you have been working on since days, and you just don't, exactly as you just said. I
Yep.
think, and I have seen live examples of it in my journey, so I can just really link each thing with what you said.
Yep.
That's
Good.
absolutely true.
Yeah.
Um, Thanks for that. Magnus, my next question is, you're also Microsoft Regional Director, right? I would like to know a little bit more about it as roles and responsibility, and how does it differentiate from Microsoft MVP? Like, what is the difference between the two?
That there isn't a formal relationship at all, between being an MVP and or being a regional director.
Okay.
You don't become an MVP first and then kind of graduate or get promoted to RD, or there's no relationship, none at all. It happens that they are, managed together within Microsoft as separate things, but managed together. And I think may have noticed, just recently, that Microsoft revamped the whole
Website.
MVP setup and actually included three things together: not only the regional directors and the MVPs, but also the Microsoft Student Ambassador program in the same under the same kind of umbrella. It's related, right? And I love nothing better, this, than to work with the student ambassadors, because you were once one, not maybe super long time ago. You were one yourself. Now you're a professional and you're out in your career, but you were there in the
One,
program, right?
1.5 year back, exactly.
Exactly. So that's what it
Graduated.
is, right? Just, yeah, and then we talked back then, and I think that there's nothing, well, nothing, but there's certainly almost nothing as inspiring as talking to the young Microsoft student ambassadors who are so driven and passionate and excited and energetic. It's just brilliant, and I'm happy to see that Microsoft has now kind of taken all of these three, put them together. I was never a Microsoft student ambassador because the program didn't exist when I was that age, just to be clear. And so that putting all of those together in like one, context. But it still means that, like I said, there isn't a relationship at all as such between the, being a technical expert as an MVP and being more maybe of a strategical select partner, as you would be, if you're a regional director. That's two different things. The regional director program also has a lot of years, behind it, and I definitely came in way late in that program. There are some who have been regional directors for over 2 decades, which is amazing. And what that is, it's, just, I think now the number is just over 200, people across the world who are selected by Microsoft, specifically handpicked and vetted and put into a context where we are engaging and interacting on a daily basis with the top level Microsoft leadership, with the VP level, with everyone up there. And they use this forum, Microsoft, as a connection to the world. We are business leaders. We are, I don't know, thought leaders, what have you. I don't want to sound as if I'm too boastful here, but we are people who are vetted and people who are specifically picked for this, that Microsoft trusts. We have a long-standing relationship. We have a deep partnership together. And they know that we do a lot out there in the world, and they want to hear about it. They want to know what we do. So they use the technical MVP group, which is several thousands, as references for their technical development, which is all brilliant. And you have to be a deep technical expert in developer technology to be an MVP for developer technologies, right? You have to know about that space. You have to know about DevOps to be a DevOps MVP. You have to be a proven leader in that community. But it's a very technical and most often kind of specific thing. I would say, if all technology is this much, MVP in a certain area is this much on depth. But being a regional director is more like a broad spectrum of general knowledge across, but also strategic. We are people who are accustomed to being in a boardroom, to talk to executives as well as technology people. And for some reason, Microsoft decided to pick us. I mean, we are so honored.
Definitely, it's an honor, I swear.
Yes, it is.
And if someone is just doing it out of passion, right, you just keep on doing that, irrespective of whether you are an MVP or not, because that's something that like you are passionate about, I'm
Thank you.
passionate about. So there's no full stop to it, right?
Thank you, Navika. You couldn't have, like that was the best comment of this whole conversation. Saying you're so passionate that you can't help yourself but to do it.
Yeah.
You will do it. You will engage. You will step forward. You will say, "Oh, let's do that. That sounds fun. Yes, and we'll do that together." And you just can't help yourself because you're like that. You're such a person, right? And if such a person who is like you, if Microsoft notices that you exist, right? Somebody says, "Hey, what about Navika?" And then they it's natural that you will be nominated. Maybe you will become an MVP, and you became one, you are, and it's just that it doesn't have to be that you're ever an MVP just because you're passionate, just because you're skilled, just because you're great. You can be great anyway. But it's a nice bonus. It's a nice bonus, but it's not, like you said, we're not in it for the title. We're in it for the lifestyle, right? We would do this anyway. And actually, a lot of people have said that to me or asked over the years, and I've always said that honestly, if I were to roll it all back to when I graduated from university and start over, I honestly think that I would end up here again. I think I would, because of who I am, how I am. And I see about you that you're very much also the same kind of mindset. Just we can't do it any other way. This is the way we do it.
You would have just found a way out to be here.
Yeah,
any which
I think so. Not for the end goal of being here, but the outcome would be the same, I think.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's a statement, yeah. So Magnus, can you just, wrapping up with the last question, can you give some advice to the fresh MVPs or someone who is wanting to be a Microsoft Most Valuable Professional?
Someone who wants to be, or someone who just became one? Yeah, I think it seems so obvious, but I've come across people that are guarded with their knowledge. But I think you should always give your knowledge away as much as possible. And the expectation and my experience and the same with my MVP peers is that when we give our knowledge away, we gain so much more in return. There is nothing more rewarding than And not everybody likes to talk at a conference, but if you are willing to try and prepare a session and send in an abstract or something like that to a conversation, to a conference, and if you go to a conference maybe to present and speak, there's nothing more rewarding than to mind share with the other speakers and people who are as nutty about technology as you are, people who are as passionate about it as you are, and so experienced and skilled, and learn from them. So I think wanting to become an MVP or being a new MVP, it is about engaging with the community, in my opinion. Just keep growing your own network, your own base of people that you can reach out to when you have a specific challenge. I have, a group of very close friends who are Azure MVPs for many years, and even some of the program managers at Microsoft are in that group. That either were already that we got to know at Microsoft, or have been an MVP and become a program manager at Microsoft. So I can just turn to them whenever I have a problem, and get a solution. I honestly did that once, and I could solve a real customer problem through my network, by being connected to the exact engineer who was working on that exact thing that I had a problem with at Microsoft. That's a power that you as an MVP have been bestowed, but only if you nurture it, right? Only if you grow that connection, that network with your peers across the MVP landscape, the other MVPs who are also as present and passionate as you, but also internally with the people at Microsoft. You might look at someone like, let's take the biggest name, or one of the biggest names, because he was just announced, he was just promoted to vice president of community vice president of developer community at Microsoft is Scott Hanselman. He was just promoted. Let's take him as an example. He's a superstar. He's a rock star. Everybody knows him. Yeah, absolutely, for sure. Except that he's also just a person, right? And he enjoys meeting interesting people and talking about interesting things and learning and passionately sharing as well. He's just another person, famous, but just another person. And the same goes with many of the other people at Microsoft. They want to know how the thing that they work on as engineers and managers all day who work on at Microsoft, how is that used in the real world? They want to know about you and your job and who you are and how you use their product. So engaging in that network is the true value of being an MVP. That's the thing that's most valuable that you can get back from there, but only if you engage with it, only if you take the initiative to grow that network of connections. And that's how I would advise people to go about it. Get to know them. And if you're not an MVP yet and you want to become one, I advise you to get to know your local Microsoft representatives, understand what they like, and then see if, hey, I can help you with that, because that sounds like fun technology that I want to be part of. And then they get to know you, and then they say, hey, that person is really good. Maybe that person is an MVP.
Yeah. I agree to you. And you got to, if you become one, you have to properly, actively participate in it. Like, giving 100% in whatever you're doing, not just this community in general. And
exactly,
that's gonna that's true. Thank you
Okay.
so much, Magnus, for your valuable advice, and thank you so much once again for taking out your precious time. And
pleasure.
it was really, I have learned so many things while interacting with you. It went so naturally, and it was pretty much informative, educative, and I'm sure the people who are going to watch this would surely get inspired, because even I have. So one person at least, like, you've inspired me for sure, and I'm sure people are going to love this
Thank you.
conversation.
That's so kind of you to say.
And
Thank you.
thank you so much, Magnus, for taking your time once again, and looking forward to collaborate with you soon.
Yes, that's the same. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Magnus.